Hey BookTube, welcome back. I'm Winx, and the ink I'm talking about today is The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury. January is Vintage Sci-Fi Month, so I read this book in honor of that, and I actually did a buddy read on it with Kelsy from kelsyfish, so I will link her channel below. So today I thought I would just do a little review video about this book. And as a warning, I do plan on talking about several different chapters and points in the plot, which will be somewhat spoilery, and if that is a problem, please do not watch this video until you finish reading the book. I went into this book expecting it to be a bit outdated because it was written in the 1940s and set around current times, and so I thought it would be not quite as relatable as some modern science fiction books because of that. But I was actually really surprised because not only was it still relatable in a lot of ways, a lot of the points were even more striking because they were issues back in the 1940s and still hold true today. The book starts in 1999, and life on Earth is getting really uncomfortable. We are basically on the verge of World War III. Every major country has atomic bombs, and so the idea of getting off the planet and going to start fresh on Mars is looking really nice to a lot of people. So the first few chapters are the first few human missions to Mars, and these end rather unfortunately for the astronauts. Mars is super creepy and all kinds of really strange things happen, and none of the first few missions succeed. Eventually, there is a successful mission and humans are able to start going to Mars and establishing different towns and such, and many people are excited to get away from the current culture and to basically start fresh. Some of the ideas that Bradbury had for what the future would be like are actually just really amusing, and in a few cases are unintentionally hilarious. One part that really cracked me up mentioned that some people were writing their memoirs about being the first colonist of Mars, and they were sitting in their little Mars houses writing on their typewriters that they of course packed in their rocket and flew with them. So I'm picturing a little Mars colony full of hipsters just typing on their typewriters. There was also a chapter that focused on racism, which unfortunately is still a huge issue. But the way that Bradbury handled this chapter actually made me laugh out loud at one point. This chapter takes place back on Earth in a small town where civil rights obviously have not moved forward. There's no slavery, but people of color are still considered the help and are obviously super discriminated against. However, at this point in the book, humans have gotten pretty far in colonizing Mars. So the black community in this small town get together and just basically realize that if they pool all their money, they can buy a rocket ship and GTFO. So they do, and there's this awesome scene where they're all just parading down the street going to the rocket, and you see all of the old racist white people freaking out and realizing that they are now going to be left by themselves and have to do things on their own, and I thought that that was an awesome chapter. So the book had me laughing at that point. Earlier in the book, it had me thoroughly creeped out. There was actually one night where I had a hard time going to sleep because one of the chapters in the early human expeditions to Mars that had gone wrong was just so creepy, and I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And then I was crying later in the book when there was a chapter about this smart house left on a basically lifeless post-atomic war Earth is dying, and you just see it trying to save itself, and even though it's a smart house, I had so many feelings about it, and it definitely got to me. With this seemingly simple writing style, Bradbury managed to provoke a huge array of emotions in me, and he really delved into a lot of issues that got to the raw core of humanity. He explored a range of issues that I might expect to get through a season of Star Trek, but not from a 200-page book. This tiny book covered issues of android rights and colonialism and environmental issues and censorship and on and on. I was amazed, and I gave it 5 stars on Goodreads. I am highly recommending this book, especially if you want to read something in the vintage sci-fi category. It's an amazing read, and I am definitely looking forward to exploring a bit more of Bradbury's books. I'm curious to hear if any of you have read this book and what you think. I got a few comments in some previous videos that I mentioned this book in that made it seem like several of you had already read this and really enjoyed it, so I definitely would love to hear more about it from you guys. I'd also love to know if anybody has any good recommendations for other vintage sci-fi books, or for Bradbury books specifically. Hope everyone is having a great week, and I will talk to you later. Bye!